Anyways, and first of all, I want to say thank you to Google for providing the teaser before lunch about AI. But what we're going to do is talk about the role of AI, and without realizing it, AI has been part of your life for more than a decade already, and we're going to have people talk about it. So, and why is it? So most importantly, what we're going to do is I just want to announce that we're going to be starting a center for excellence in AI. And these are the reasons why. One, and these are all the folks that are doing work in the industry and gather numbers. According to Accenture, more than $600 million in one quarter was raised for AI during the first half of the fiscal year. Secondly, the opportunity, wait a second, did I miss something? And the thing is, we had more than 63 generative AI use cases, and actually delivering over $2.6 trillion annually. So there is a lot of investment, a lot of business, a lot of activity that's taking place because of generative AI. And that AI does not replace people, it actually makes people more productive. It increases productivity by 43%. More than 100, and there are hundreds of generative AI use cases. So yes, you can take pictures, because I'm not going to read it to you. And why do we need an AI center? An AI center of excellence, because AI doesn't just work with AI alone. You need people, and because AI is only technology, you also need processes. So 3 different areas in order to make it work, and you have to bring these people together, whether it be policies, whether it be guidelines, and how do people actually use AI to be more productive with their work. And with that, I'm going to pass the microphone over to Helen, because she's going to bring the people up who can talk to you about what they've been doing the last few years, why money's being invested, and how you can all make money with AI. Helen. Thank you.
Thank you, darling. And I want to give thanks to Daniel, Lane, organizing this event. And thank you, Fiona, and everybody from the state to support this. And thank you, darling, for giving us the keynote. The bottom line is from Accenture, McKinsey, Harvard Business School, and Morgan Stanley. You saw what they put out there. So AI is here. AI is not a mystery. The panel that I put together is going to bring you the history and the future of AI. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome all the panelists to the stage. And we have Dr. Bill Klein, whom I've known for over 15 years. And we have Dr. Jose playing Dutch Witch, and he's the CEO and the founder of Bright Query, BQAI. And we do have Justin Cohen, who's the head of Slalom Ventures, is a part of the Slalom consulting firm. They provide lots of technology and business consulting globally. And last but not least, Mr. Steve Little, whom I have worked with for the past decade, and he is a founder and the head of Zero Limit Ventures and Zero Limit Capital. So that's just a quick intro, and I'd like to, have each of them to give it a little bit relevant history of their business perspective, in the context of AI, and I would ask follow-up questions. So should we start with Steve?
Sure. Well, hello. Thank you for this time and your attention. As Helen points out, I'm the CEO and managing partner of Zero Limits Ventures and Zero Limits Capital. Zero Limits Ventures is a high-growth investment banking firm. We focus primarily on accelerating value prior to acquisition for our clients and our portfolio. Zero Limits Capital is a funding arm that fuels those strategies and brings those companies to market. In terms of AI, our firm, our investment banking firm, uses a process we call the valuation growth assessment process. It's our mechanism for analyzing the status of an existing enterprise and making very specific recommendations on how to pivot that company into a higher value trajectory over time so that they can derive more value for shareholders or at acquisition or their exit or IPO for that matter. One of we use a process that analyzes 24 different factors, 18 of which are probably factors you'd expect, 6 are probably factors you wouldn't expect, and one of those happens to be a deep understanding of how the company can leverage AI to actually grow value for their shareholders. So we have a set of recommendations that we analyze the company through and then make those recommendations following that. And it, to give you a sense of it, our average multiple on invested dollars is about 6.2, which for those who may not know, that puts us at within the top 1% of all funds in the world. So this is a methodology that works, and AI is a critical component of that methodology. Then as, of course, we launched Zero Limits Capital to help fuel that, and a lot of the companies we work with, we're financing their AI initiatives to generate this kind of accelerated return. That's what we do.
Justin, you want to follow up on that because you're making investments in startups and...
Testing. So, yeah, thanks. Justin Cohen. I lead Slalom Ventures, which is a part of Slalom, which is a consulting company. We're we're a management consulting company like Deloitte or Accenture, but we're a little bit smaller. So we have about $3 billion in revenue, about 13,000 consultants around the world. We're about 75% North America and 25% all over the world, Tokyo, London, Australia, and so forth. We work with next generation partners. We're big AWS partners and Salesforce and all that, but we're also really big in Snowflake and Pinecone and all of the latest technologies. And Slalom Ventures is the part of the business where we look for sort of that next generation of enabling technology in venture-backed startups. So that's what we do. We look for very practical solutions that our customers need to allow them to sort of get competitive differentiation against their peers, right? So we're always looking for that. And of course, a big part of that is artificial intelligence in many different shapes and flavors, but always with a very clear value proposition. I'm also the managing general partner for Slopal Capital, which is the private venture fund that helps fuel the growth of these next generation partners.
Thank you, Justin. Bill?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Bill Klein. I am a AI technologist and the founder of Y2AI, which is a company building AI infrastructure and technology. It's really around doing the things that we see in the movies. It's about creating AI that can speak and talk and think and do that sort of thing. I received my PhD in computer science and artificial intelligence back in the late 90s. I've been a lifetime entrepreneur. In about 2010, I formed a company that was doing AI in the entertainment and video game space, where we had an AI engine that was used by over 100,000 studios and individuals worldwide. Since then, we ended up selling our technology to Disney, and I helped Disney create something called the AI Character Studio, which is about taking all of the technology that we're talking about and applying it to Disney's IP so that the characters that your kids play with can get to know them, have conversations with them, play games with them, and do it across all of Disney's media, from playing games at home to being on Disney Plus, or even meeting your child at the park and continuing a conversation that they started at home. Since then, I moved on to the company I have today, which is Y2AI, and we may end up talking more about that later.
Yes.
Thanks.
For sure. Okay, Jose.
Hi everyone, I'm Jose Plen, founder and CEO of BrightQuery and its AI division, BQ AI. And by way of background, I'm a former academic, so I started off as an economics professor, eventually became an accounting professor and director of an accounting research center at Berkeley, at Haas. And then eventually I led a finance research center at Anderson and UCLA. Then 5 years ago, I completely quit academia to focus on BrightQuery, or BQ. And BQ is based on research that I did for almost 2 decades. And what we do is we collect, parse, and analyze a variety of government filings from close to 90,000 jurisdictions. So federal agencies, state agencies, local, and such, and all to get insights into the economy. And we, in fact, provide this back, information back to various federal agencies. And we're, in fact, working on with them on a very large-scale AI project that aims to develop a chatbot that can query, analyze, and answer questions around government statistics, starting at the federal level, then down to the state level, county, and such. And we're already in discussions with the UN Statistical Commission for launching this on a global basis. So this will probably be a decade-long project, but the vision is that eventually there will be a chatbot that you can query that will answer questions about any economy or healthcare or crime or homelessness, what have you. But instead of being based on web-scraped information, it will be based on factual numbers and reports that have been published and verified by legitimate statistical agencies. Thank you.
So I just want to dive into this very quickly. As you know, ChatGPT, OpenAI, Google, Gemini kind of transformed the universe with AI. Everybody's talking about AI, but each of you really has very deep background in tech AI data. I will start with you, Jose. I want to ask you what you've seen that's transformed the space with Gen AI, and what are the risks and opportunities from your point of view? And Bill, you will follow, and then Steve and Justin. Let's go.
Yes, absolutely. It's quite remarkable indeed what ChatGPT has done for the world the last couple of years, although it was based on technology that Google invented, and prior to that, a number of academics at various California universities, Stanford, Cal, and other places. And by the way, we're actually working with a Stanford AI lab on the initiatives I was talking about earlier. The way I see Gen AI and its role today is really kind of twofold. One is to enable what's commonly referred to as a RAG system, or retrieval system, so basically to retrieve facts. So I think AI has made it simpler for the world at large to find facts. And I think that's a wonderful contribution. As long as those facts are, of course, actual real facts and not fake facts. That's a different question. So that's one major revolution. The other revolution is the power of AI to extract insights. And there, I think we're just in the beginning stages. So right now, we're kind of more in the fact retrieval mode. Later on, I believe we're going to be in the more analysis and insights mode. And that's, I think, what will drive innovation in the next 10 years. The challenge with that is, of course, just like any powerful technology, it can also be used for negative and bad things. For example, the systems we're developing in the hands of bad actors could theoretically even bring down economies by manipulating currencies and financial markets. It's very, very dangerous. So these powerful AI tools, especially in a financial and economic realm, can be quite devastating if we're not in the right hands.
Sorry, I forgot the question. No, you wanted to know what what the big changes have been recently, and then some of the, yeah, I get it. So I think one of the things that's important to remember is that we're in a bit of a time warp right now. If you go back, let's say just 3 years or something, everybody was talking about how a computer could play Go and could beat a Go champion, which has nothing at all to do with what we're seeing today, where we see these language models that are able to converse with people and all that. You know, I'm old enough, I've been doing AI for a very long time, and I remember back when getting a system just to do simple logic was like a big deal. And so what I look at recently is say, what has changed? What has made everybody come to a talk like this and actually think that something might happen for real versus just a bunch of nonsense that a bunch of scientists talk about? And I think the one thing that's really changed for everybody is that computers now speak our language. Like, that's the big thing about large language models is we no longer have to figure out how to talk to computers. They have figured out how to talk to us. And they're able to do it very, very intelligently. And I think we probably don't even realize or accept today, even in this room here, how big a thing that is, how much that changes about the world, how much that changes about what technology can do for us. And I think, you know, the thing to be really, really cautious about, I've heard a number of people stand up here so far, and I understand why they're saying what they say, but when people talk about AI is not going to replace jobs, we should be careful about that statement as a blanket statement so that we're not covering our eyes to the fact that AI will absolutely take a bunch of jobs. The question is, how is it going to help us, and what can we do about that to make that a good thing rather than a bad thing? But we can't ignore the fact that AI can do things that people can do. It can do it cheaper, it can do it faster, it can do it at better scale. So I think that's one of the big areas to like think about, be cautious about.
Yeah, so absolutely agree with both of you in a couple of ways. So I didn't talk about my background, but my background, I started out as a physicist, but then became an entrepreneur because I'm old, and I was there for the birth of the web, right? I was in high energy particle physics, and one of my businesses, I became a serial entrepreneur, and one of my businesses was very much around automation. And that put a lot of people out of business, right? Like that caused a lot of jobs to go away. But the result of that was a ton of new jobs that had much higher productivity and so forth. So everybody at the time, right, and this was the late 90s, early 2000s, people were worried about it, right? But it turned out to be a big benefit. And so I absolutely agree with that. And I think that's kind of the stage, and then getting to what you were saying, is that we're in this stage right now where actually AI is being used to automate. At least that's what we're seeing at the enterprise level. So again, we've got this lens of enterprise B2B type of technologies of helping enterprise companies right now. And so that's the big thing, is like, how can we do things faster? How can we do things better? And I think the future, right, will be these insights. But I think we have a long way to go in just the automation component. And here's what I mean by automation, and a little bit of a separation between computers speaking our language. I'll use an example. One of our big upcoming partners that we're really excited about is a company called Volatics. What they do is they're a data security platform. This is a little bit geeky technical, but basically if you're an enterprise and you've got lots of data sources, you've got databases, you've got shared drives with PDFs in it, you've got S3 buckets and stuff like that, and you've got consumers of that data, and then you've got policies which joins which consumers, the people, or roles or whatever, can see what data, right? That's very hard to maintain. Humans suck at maintaining that. So if you've got a new dashboard and you need certain people to have access to certain data, then ultimately a human's got to decide, well, does policy allow that, or which things do policies allow, and how do I need to change that? Well, what Volatics does is it actually uses an AI inference engine to interrogate your current policies and infer what you meant by those policies. GDPR, right? Like all of these kinds of, like, ultimately it's sort of a legal governance thing that drives a lot of this stuff, and it infers it and it says, hey, everybody seems to no one seems to have access to personnel files except for HR and this guy Justin. Maybe that's a mistake, right? Like, and so it's able to figure that out. And that's an automation kind of thing, right? And now every time someone needs new access, boom, it's done like that instead of taking 6 months, which is what it typically takes, because it's a very hard task for humans to do. But then they have another component where now when you're asking for access to data, instead of checking boxes and things like that, you can actually just communicate like a human being. And you could say, hey, I've got a team of people. These are the people that I work with. They're all sales executives. They need access to this data, da-da-da-da. And this sort of chatbot, LLM-powered software can respond, hey, GDPR doesn't allow that to go here, but here's what we could do. We could change it, da-da-da-da. And as the end result, it becomes essentially a ticket that then gets wrapped into the system. So those are the kinds of real-world things that we're seeing right now. But I think the very interesting stuff coming down the line is this sort of more high-level thinking about how to do your job better. But I think there's a lot to do with automation today that we're very excited about, and certainly for the next 5, 10 years is going to drive a lot of productivity.
Thank you. Steve, you want to add to that before next question?
Sure. So I'm not a technologist, so I can't really speak to the same level of detail. From my perspective, though, I think what ChatGPT and the others have done is really create pervasive awareness of something that was behind the curtain, so to speak. I mean, I'll admit I was shocked to realize how long you've been doing this. It's a long time, right? So this technology is not new. But the fact that we have something like ChatGPT or so many other tools similar to that, that now sort of bring to the average person this marvelous ability to get access to so much intelligence, or what seems like intelligence to the average person, is very, very powerful. And we're seeing real practical application of just that in business, not at a technologist level, not at the enterprise level, at the Main Street level. You know, so when we make recommendations to our clients that, hey, you have all these different AI-based tools you can use that will improve your marketing, improve your communication, improve your website, improve performance of the business, improve your financials, improve your modeling technologies. All of a sudden, we're creating forklift upgrades to the quality of a business, therefore the value of a business, just by implementing the stuff that's available to everybody on the street, let alone the technologists that can take this and do all these amazing enterprise things with it. So, you know, we have companies that are doing revolutionary things with creating their own AIs, right? One of my leading portfolio companies has an AI that does incredible things with a large language model based exclusively on over hundreds of millions of podcast episodes. So there's all kinds of things that are coming, and they're coming by virtue of the fact that we created this awareness. And I think that's the biggest impact that this had.
Okay, so we're bringing AI to Earth, and the purpose of this for each of you walk away and think about what you can do. Just like Fiona mentioned that she uses ChatGPT because that's just a sounding board. So my question to all of you, now Bill, pay attention, because you need to remember this question. The question is, given the concern of data security, the concern of hallucination, everybody knows that, and the concern about the use cases that may or may not be sensible. You know that there is, you know, lots of, you know, misused AI, you know, applications, you know. So my question to all of you is, what does it take in terms of do's and don'ts for organizations, enterprises, you know, people want to do good to improve their productivity? What are the things you think they should do, or what they shouldn't do to make this happen? Because as Harvard Business School said, you should improve your productivity at least 43% if you use Gen AI properly. Okay, so I will start with Bill.
So I can remember the question?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll be a little controversial. I think one of the difficulties with AI and thinking about what should be done, I think you're talking about just safeguarding AI. One of the difficulties is that, you know, especially with things like ChatGPT, they're intended to be general purpose tools for intelligence. They're not intended to be something different than that. And so when you try to artificially put safety like barriers around something like ChatGPT, you're usually limiting its ability and putting artificial bias into it, actually. You're putting the bias in of whoever created the safety filter rather than letting the bias come from some other source. So typically when it comes to safety, most of the time you want to spend your time on the data side. Like when you trained the model in the first place, did your data represent what you actually wanted it to do? Unfortunately, a lot of the bigger companies are putting extra safety measures around the outside of it. And that's a bit tough because it essentially says that a company, and no offense to Google, I know you're in here, but a company like Google or Microsoft or somebody else get to decide for you what's safe or what's not safe, what's right or what's wrong. And I'm not suggesting that they're doing anything negative right now, but I'm saying that that's not really the way to do it. Doing that is a little like telling a fire not to be hot or the ocean not to be wet or something like that. Like, this is the whole purpose. It's a language model that's intended to be general purpose. So Again, I've lost the question, but you know, but generally, you know, there's not any. I guess what I'll stop in a second, but I'll say there's not an easy answer because we're talking about something that's probably about as soon to be as intelligent as you and me, and you know, how do you put a cork in that? How do you stop that from being what it is? I don't think we have answers yet. I'll say that.
Okay, Steve.
Oh, okay. You know, I think that there's a practical application of the technology that is very pervasive. I suggested in my last answer some ideas about that or some of the ways that I know it's being used. But there's also, I think, this notion that it takes a specific level of intelligence to actually use an AI. And I think that there is that piece, but I think there are companies, Helen, that are creating mechanisms or creating ways to actually commercially implement AI in a very effective way without developing high orders of internal expertise and awareness. I mean that in all sincerity. So to me, as simple as my mind works, it sort of falls into three categories. There's the technologists that are going deep and doing incredible things. I mean, just the stuff we saw about cancer research and so on, mind-blowing, just totally mind-blowing to me. And amazing, and it's all good, right? Then there's ChatGPT and the other tools that are, in my way of looking at them, pretty surface level. I mean, they're, you know, yeah, they're basically limited by the quality of the language model that they're pointed at. And, you know, if you know what you're asking and you know the integrity of the data model that you're using, you can probably use them practically and generate some good outcomes, right? But then there's everything else that exists in the enterprise. And I don't think it makes sense for organizations to make massive investments in developing internal competence and expertise around AI if there's companies that can generate tool sets that can help normalize that and bring sound implementation strategies to large pools of effective data. And so I see that as a third category of company.
Yeah, by the way, that's what I do with my startup.
Really?
Thank you, Steve. All right, Jose?
Sure, yes. Great question, by the way. So I believe the future of AI will very likely depend on hyper-focused and personalized models. I think it's extremely likely that within 5 years, we will each have our own personalized AI on our phone, which is unique to us and hopefully unfettered and inaccessible to others. And that one agent or that one model will help manage our lives, our communications, our finances, our relationships, and all matters. It will become also almost like a pseudo personality, a pseudo version, an AI version of ourselves. I suspect Apple, that's their vision, perhaps Meta. We're all working on these very, very small models that can live on a phone. So I do believe that's probably from a personal productivity, personal efficiency standpoint, very likely to happen. How that interacts with the AI systems at the enterprise level, I think will be a very interesting question, and it will further blend the personal with the professional, which I think we'll struggle with in general anyways, and AI systems will perhaps enhance that connectivity. Another point worth mentioning, I believe, is that specialized models that are very task-focused and task-specific, I think, will eventually, rule the day. I know there's a lot of talk about artificial general intelligence, but I don't know if that's I don't know if that will be a massive game changer to humanity or to our own lives. I think what will be much more impactful are these very specialized, focused tools, AI-driven, that help with very specific tasks and operations. Last thing I will say regarding safety and such that you touched upon, I do believe there is a need for extremely strong regulation. I think California can, in fact, probably help set be a leader in this area. I don't think it should just be led by federal agencies or multinational agencies. I do think within 5 years there will be systems that are powerful enough to take control of nuclear power stations, take control of banks, take control of financial assets around the world without too much effort. And I believe teenagers will have the ability to control that. So there is a need for very, very strong regulation, which companies, me being an AI entrepreneur myself, I do believe at the end there is a conflict of interest for companies to self-regulate. So I would strongly encourage California leaders to consider further regulation along those dimensions in partnership with AI vendors in the space.
So Justin, if you could just summarize it based on what you're doing, because you are very focused on enterprise, what works, what doesn't work in today's landscape, and what do you look for in terms of the breakthroughs in the future with your investment decisions and your clients? Please.
Yeah, I'm going to say a couple of things. One is I want to relate and understand, Bill, what you're saying about the trying to make the ocean not wet and all that kind of stuff. But I'm with you on that we need regulation, because I think we're already there. I think one of the existential threats that we have, frankly, is that even before we get to AGI, the general intelligence, we have enough right now with ChatGPT to have virtual boyfriends and girlfriends. And I'm not joking. I think it's an existential threat to our species. I really do. And I think without regulations that govern this, we've got, I mean, that's just one of the millions of problems. And I do think that hacking, right, it's an easy thing for AI to do. And so we have to be very careful about that. And the original question, if I understood you correctly, is if you're an enterprise, if you're a business, right, how do you go about getting the productivity gains, which I might question those percentages as of right now, but how do you go about getting productivity gains in a business, but safely, right? And so Slalom, we have 3,000 enterprise customers, right? Guess what they're asking every single day, right? That's exactly the question that they're asking. And so we have a whole, what we call POV, point of view, on all of that, right? So it begins with, and we have a whole thing, so I'm not going to go into it, but it's like you kind of need a group that's thinking about this, which you might call a center of excellence, and you got to think about, all right, what are the actual goals? Not just let's play around with this, right? But like, what's our business? How can this be applied? And then what kind of safety do we need around it? And I'm going to plug another one of our portcos here, a local company called Add Value Machines, or AVM. What they do is they're exactly for this situation where if you're an enterprise and you want your HR department to be able to use ChatGPT, and you want your finance department to be able to use Gemini or what have you, right? But you need to make sure that your personal data, your company secrets or personnel files and things like that are not shared, right? So this is actually, think of it as like a landing pad and some sort of firewall interface between your company and these open LLMs or even internal ones. And what it does is when you say, hey, ChatGPT, write me an offer letter for this person which I want to hire, right? And what it does, it says like, we're not going to give OpenAI this person's personal information and how much we're paying him, so it redacts that and it converts that into a whatever general name and social security number, whatever. And then you still get the power of ChatGPT coming back, but you don't have any of the kinds of violations of PII stuff that enterprises and businesses really care about right now. So I encourage you to, if you're interested in that, we have a whole thing we're ready to present. I know that Malia is not here anymore. I almost got her badge. They almost gave me her badge. I said I was not elected for that position. But I was going to mention to her, we would actually be able to help, and Fiona, I'll direct it to you, we have we kick in dollars to do things for good, right? And we've helped governments, and when COVID was coming up, we'd be happy to help work on your website and have an AI sort of chatbot interface to be able to get people information and all that kind of stuff. I know just the person to connect you with. My good friend Randy Tan does this stuff with government all the time, so we'd be happy to help.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, I don't know how much more time we've got. I don't know how many. We have 10 minutes? Okay, so why don't we do this? I will ask each of you to kind of make a statement based on your experience about AI for this audience. Particularly, we have the state treasurer here. We have lots of people, you know, with lots of influence in our society. So, you know, take your stand and make your statement about the AI today for this audience. And then I will open up for questions from the audience. Who's ready? Go.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you for putting together this panel. I think this is a wonderful idea, and I'm glad we're all able to share our thoughts. So, a very, very important piece that we have found at BrightQuery in the AI systems we've built for ourselves and for statistical agencies is the need to have a human in the loop. It's extremely important. And what does that really mean? It could sometimes be a subject matter expert that is there to fine-tune, train, whatever you want to call it, have a human perspective to ensure that the system does not go off the rails, which they have a tendency to do. It's also important to have a human in the loop for safeguards, making sure, you know, there's only so much that the programming can build in terms of what's reasonable, what's respectable, what's legal, and so on. It's impossible for humans to evaluate every question and answer that an AI system generates, and that's a very, very big challenge that, you know, at my company we struggle with, and I believe a lot of AI systems others struggle with. But the key message, at least from my standpoint, is that regardless of how good the engineers and the code is, I believe, at least in our lifetimes, there will always be the need for a human in the loop to keep an eye on these systems, and we should make sure that that remains so.
Thank you, Jose. Well put. Okay, Bill, before you make the final statement, I do want to bring up this history of, I've known him for 15 years, and in 2012, we traveled the world and introduced his first AI company to CEOs of public companies, and they look at us like, you're aliens, we don't need AI. And then years later, he worked closely with Tony Robbins and created the AI alter ego of Tony. So I would like your statement to be spicier than anybody else. Who knows what he's working on next?
That's not a problem. All right. So I'll respectfully disagree with my fellow panelists just a little bit to say I think that AI is moving faster than you think. Like if you're hearing the things that we're all saying up here, I get that I'm on one end of the spectrum. You know, I think very aggressively about it. But I'll tell you, systems are more capable than you think they are. They're able to do more than you think they are. And a lot of the talk about humans in a loop and that sort of thing is coming from the human side, meaning we're saying that because we want it, not because it's necessary. And so I don't know which way the world's going to go in the future. I don't know what we're going to all decide to do together. But in terms of what the technology is capable of, just don't fool yourself. It can operate on its own. The ability for it to do that is getting better and better. Our need to have humans in the loop is less and less. And I think one of the things to really sort of put in your mind as you think about what all that's going to mean is one of the big issues that we're going to see it later this year, we're going to see it more and more in the coming years, is about information and your ability to tell what information is real and what information is not real. And that's one of the big issues that I'm sure the state will be thinking about and lots of people are going to be thinking about. And I can tell you that I don't think anybody out there has an answer right now. I can tell you that AI systems can build videos that you can't tell whether they're real or not. They can take anybody in this room right now and make it seem like you said something that you never said. And that's today. That's with current technology. So just another thought to put in your head. AI is more powerful than you think it is. It's moving faster than you probably think it is. And it's time for us to start thinking a lot about how we even evaluate information because of that. There you go.
Okay, I think Steve is ready.
I am. I couldn't agree more with that statement, those statements. I think it's an exciting opportunity and a scary one at the same time. I think that I've recently had an opportunity to meet an individual who has been in the AI world longer than anyone else I know, and she did it in the military, and she's got information about things that we're able to do that no one here have any awareness of whatsoever that's coming out of the military complex. And it can be frightening from that perspective, but it's also very empowering from the counter to that. So I agree with you 100%. It's capable, much more capable than we even can imagine, okay? But I also think that there are technological solutions for a large portion, not 100%, but a large portion of the scary part, right? The scary part about, an AI can recreate any one of us and put it out there and say things that you didn't say. That kind of thing can be addressed with other technologies like blockchain. So if we can marry these things and move them forward so that we're able to see and make a distinction as humans, that's real, that's not real. This is true, that's not true, right? Then, those things are going to self-organize. I do think there's going to be a place for regulation for sure, but I don't think it necessarily means that it has to regulate every aspect of the technology. And I don't think you can. I think it's going to move faster than we can regulate. So I think responsible technologists who can incorporate the kinds of security and using other technologies and mechanisms to make sure that we don't create nightmare scenarios, I think that's the responsible way to deploy.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, close us out. Justin.
Yeah, I think Jose and I are on one side here. And look, so the point that I agree most about is that it's going to be very difficult to regulate. This is the problem. It's advancing so quickly. And right now, I think that OpenAI can detect 95% of DALL-E created images. I guess they look at the hands, right? But that's today. And in the future, and I mean, if you guys have seen, some of the Stable Diffusion stuff, it is freaking crazy how realistic it is, right? And there's going to be no difference between a photograph, a legit photograph, and something that Stable Diffusion creates. There's just going to be no difference. Some current examples, if you guys haven't seen Microsoft's, I don't know how to pronounce it, VASA, V-A-S-A, see it. It's mind-blowing, right? You take one two-dimensional picture and a voice track, and that person is giving a speech to that voice track so hyper-realistically. It's incredible. Also recently, I think it was Arizona's Secretary of State, they were doing training for poll workers, and it was like a 2-day, training and all this kind of stuff, and it was kicked off by the Secretary of State, who gave this video address and all this kind of stuff, and it was great. It was talking about it, the agenda, blah, 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 blah. And at the very end of the 2-day event, it was revealed that that initial video was actually a deep fake, right? So this is the kind of stuff that we're working with. Everybody was fooled. 100% of the people were fooled there. They weren't told about it, right? So this is the kind of stuff that we have to deal with. Now, how do you regulate it? I'm not a politician. I don't know how to do that. So what I will say, though, but I think bright minds need to be thinking about this because it's really important. It has a real potential to mess with us, mess with democracy, mess with humanity, cause a lot of troubles, and there's just small bad actors can amplify their effect with this. That said, I want to offer some hope, and that is we are seeing real productivity gains in sort of these RAG models, sort of specialized instances of AI in business. And people are really harnessing it and making use of it in a safe way, in a way that's helping their business, helping humanity, helping their employees, generating new profits. and in a way that's net good for humanity. And I think there's a lot we can do there, and I'm very excited about that.
Thank you. I think the conclusion is with this, phenomenal panel, everybody should get involved, because if you let AI, move so fast and you're not paying attention, you're not, harness it and benefit from it, then, we'll be further behind. So I think that's a takeaway. Please, Fiona, your question.
Oh, for those of us who travel internationally, normally if I'm speaking to a Chinese audience, I have to have a translator, or I just speak English and half the room doesn't understand me, but I was doing simultaneous translation and it was coming up on the screen, in Chinese, which was amazing. So I think, for us that don't speak 6 languages like Dolph, this is going to be a game changer. We can go all over and talk.
Thank you.
Translating what you're actually saying.
Within 1 year, it'll be your face and your mouth saying it, translated into 6 different languages perfectly naturally.
Any questions from the audience?
Hi, I have one. It's really to do with the concentration of capital. 3 companies, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, have invested 2/3 of all of AI innovation. And there's basically, 6 to 8 same guys on all the boards of these companies. And it's a real concentration. So as someone who's an innovator in AI, I've been similarly working in the AI field really since about 2009, 10. It's very concerning, but also the ethics of AI in terms of the quality of the data set. Is it truly diverse? I mean, does it have women? Does it have minorities? Does it have, everybody in it? So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that and what you would do to address it.
I can speak to that if you want a little bit. Yeah, these are the frontier models, right, that they're referred to. And it costs billions of dollars to make these frontier models. I do think that these major companies are doing their best to get a diversity of training material for it, but it's very difficult. And I'm sure you know about the issues that we're having with the New York Times suing OpenAI, right? Like, this has yet to be settled and figured out. Everybody needs to be made whole in this, and Reddit, the same thing, right? Like, OpenAI is trained on Reddit, and that's both good and bad, right? All these kinds of things. But the concentration is a serious concern, and I do think that government has a role to play in this, right? So, look, I'm a capitalist. I'm a venture capitalist, right? Like, I do believe that capitalism is the best way to move resources to where they're needed most. However, it's not for all situations. When we have externalities like an oil well that's shared by 30 people and they all just race to the bottom, this is bad. Or there's a river running through a city and everybody's just incentivized to dump in it, right? That's where government needs to step in, because capitalism doesn't work. It fails in these kinds of problem sets, right? And so I think we have a situation here where the amount of money required in order to create a new frontier model is so large that governments do need to step in and help make it a fair and a level playing field. That said, with RAG models, you can do quite a bit. So if you've got a different spin on things and you want to make things that work better for this community, there is a technological way of helping that, but it still doesn't address the root cause. That's my 2 cents on it.
Okay, we have a question back here.
Hi. Hypothetically, can we still stop AI or regulate it?
Hypothetically or realistically?
You can answer it whichever way you want. Yeah.
The question was, can we stop AI? Well, at the moment, we're all still in control, so I think the answer to that is yes. We've alluded to this idea that there may be systems coming that are autonomous. They operate on their own. They don't require humans in the loop. Who knows? Once we get to that point and there are more systems deployed that operate on their own and systems that can begin to learn on their own, things like that. We're in California. I don't need to tell people how Hollywood works and that sort of thing, but you can imagine. Yeah.
I don't think you can really stop it, seriously, because we're talking about things we know about, and I'm alluding to things that we don't know about, which are by far, decades ahead of what we know about. So I don't really think they're stopping it. I think your point is, I don't think we disagree as much as you think we do. I think that I'm saying there is a place for regulation. Finding that is going to be tricky, okay? But I also think there's technologies that we can use to leverage and protect ourselves a little bit from our own zealousness, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe it. So I don't think there's putting this genie back in the bottle, though.
And one comment I can add that perhaps relates to both questions is, let's not forget that all AI systems were built by humans and therefore reflect human biases, insecurities, problems, and such. Correct. And so there will be inherent bias. And to your point, most of these systems have been developed by, let's face it, probably less than 100 primarily male engineers in Northern California. And so there's going to be massive inherent bias in that. I don't think we should ask ourselves, should we stop it or enhance it? I think the right question should be, how do we assimilate it in our lives? That's the question.
That's a good point.
Okay, so I'd like to thank each of you taking the time, traveling here, speaking to the audience, and it's truly a pleasure having you today. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Justin. Thank you.
Where we're going to discuss why have your startup in California. This will be led by Jason Gahari. He's the chairman of AG Global Capital, which assists companies with various challenges, including capital needs, growth strategies, IP, monetization, market expansion, as well as expertise in M&A, startup investment, real estate, infrastructure projects, commodities trade, and technology, aiming to guide companies towards successful and facilitate investments globally. We'll be bringing up Ahmed Mirza, who's an early stage investor with Techstars, as well as Sahid Mohammadi, Executive Vice President of Growth and Delivery at NISM.
Okay. I know it would be great if we stay together for probably another, it's probably going to be about 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Then we can empty the room so they can set up the room for our gala. But we have an exciting participants in this panel, which I noticed there's a lot of, we have many startups actually that we can get some insight as to why to do that in California, and actually talk to some of the investors in California about that as well. So with that, I wanted to kind of ask you guys about, story of creation, how you guys started, and then ask you some specific questions as well. So Sajid, if you want to go ahead.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for hosting this wonderful event. And I appreciate the people here that are rallied till the end, almost the end.
Almost.
Yeah. So I'm with a company called NISM. We're a technology consulting firm. We specialize in kind of all things digital. So most of our clients are Fortune 100 to 500 type organizations, and we build their digital capabilities. And of course, increasingly, a lot of artificial intelligence capabilities. So why California? Why has that worked? On the one hand, it's a matter of pragmatism, and the other is it's where the market's at. We've heard a lot of great things today about how big of a market California is, how much economic activity there is here, and that has really been important for us in terms of driving our growth. So we've been around for 24 years, so we're not fresh out the gates, and we've seen a lot of success in California. We have globally about 2,000 people, but about 500 of those folks are here in California. So in terms of the pragmatic reason of being here, The founders are here. They were part of leading tech organizations in the late 90s and started up their new company here, actually in Brea, not too far from here. And over time, the reason that it's been really a great market for us is kind of threefold. One is the type of talent we can attract, right? So top-tier talent, great universities, kind of the entire suite of reasons people have been talking about all afternoon, morning and afternoon. And the other is the type of clients that we get to work with. So even if our clients are not headquartered in California, their technology groups, at least the most innovative and cutting-edge parts of their technology orgs, are usually here, right, in the Bay Area, typically. So we're able to work with them on those types of initiatives, and it really helps us stay ahead and keep them ahead in terms of their business. The work we do for them is really trying to advance their differentiation in the market. And then the third big reason is the type of work we get to do, right? So being in California is very innovative, it's very cutting edge. So that really serves to both points 1 and 2 in terms of talent sourcing and client sourcing. So broadly speaking, that's why.
What are some of the services you guys do? Because you've been around for a long time, obviously. And how did AI actually change that?
Yeah, so a big part of our service offering is building these large custom applications, right? So let's say there's a retailer that has various parts of their e-commerce engine. We'll go in and build that, either a content system, a promotion system, all the hundreds of applications behind the scenes that go off when you are maybe buying a T-shirt online or what have you, or buying groceries that get delivered to your house. So for us, so we build that, we design those, we help them with their technology roadmap. All of these elements have a piece that has been impacted by artificial intelligence. So we are building more with AI tools. We're also solving for business use cases with AI, meaning marketing automation or in terms of search capabilities when you go onto a website, so on and so forth. So there's what's transformative about AI through a business lens, that it helps the top line, right, is revenue generating, and it helps the bottom line, right? So it's helping with the profitability. So any business leader is looking at how we can leverage that in those two dynamic ways.
Anything that you think that the government can do to help for you to grow more in California?
Well, I think there's a whole lot that the government can certainly do. I think providing the scaffolding, right, for this type of an ecosystem. A lot of it was discussed earlier, and I think really it's building infrastructure, allowing for a way to create ethics, considerations and regulation around AI, but at the same time letting the technology evolve in ways that are going to be dynamic. I think one of the best things government can probably do is what many folks here are doing, getting smart on it and understanding how we can stay ahead of it, because, or at least on par with it, because it is obviously moving fast and it's transformative, right? Like the individual said, it's the genie's out of the bottle. So we need to embrace it in a way that's going to allow us to move ahead in faster ways.
Ahmad, going back to you, if you start a little about your company as well and how you started.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Ahmed Mirza. I am an investor at Techstars. For those of you not familiar, Techstars is the largest pre-seed investment firm in the world. We've invested in 4,000 companies worldwide and continue to increase our investments year over year. I kind of come at venture investing. I was a former founder. I've built 2 startups. Haven't had a big exit just yet, but I did have a soft landing with one. And then I was a venture builder for a number of years. My claim to fame is that I built 7 companies in the span of 3 years. Everything from SaaS, robotics, metaverse, when that was cool, to a bunch of other different applications. So I've seen, sort of all different parts of, the startup journey, what it takes to bring a product to market, and that's sort of what informs my, investment thesis and investment direction with Techstars.
What do you look for in this day and age, basically? What is the strategy based on the economy, both domestically as well as, what are you looking for as far as companies you want to invest in right now?
Yeah, for me, it really comes down to, I think, two simple things. First thing is, I really want to find companies and founders that are solving a real problem. A lot of times, we come across founders and startup companies that, think that they have a company and think that they're solving a need, but they haven't done enough work in terms of understanding the market, understanding the customers that they're selling into, really understanding all the different elements of that market, and crystallizing a very clear value proposition to their end user. So I'm trying to find actual businesses that are solving real problems, making things more efficient, removing fragmentation in the market. But yeah, so it starts with that, and then of course a big part of where I look at, which is the early stage of venture, where we don't have very much data, we don't have a lot of numbers to go off of. We're investing in the team, right? We're investing in people. We have to believe that it's, not only are they likable people, but also that they're the right team building something great in a great market.
And that was kind of my question as well. Are you looking at, because sometimes we look at a company and you say, okay, this is a really great product, but the management, really can't work with.
Yeah.
Is it the horse or the jockey that you kind of evaluate, and what is the strategy you look for?
Yeah, it goes in tandem, but for us, specifically at Techstars, we're investing in people. It's the earliest stage, the ideas, and we invest in post, sort of idea companies that have products in market that are generating some sort of revenue.
Proof of concept.
They have a proof of concept. They're already, getting that customer feedback to make the product better. But we want to make sure that the people behind it have some sort of either domain expertise, they have some experience in the marketplace, they're quick thinkers and quick movers. So many founders I meet are hesitant to take action and move the ball. A hallmark of a great founder, of a great entrepreneur, is the ability to assess the marketplace, make a decision, and get to that next decision point. So we look for sort of founders that are willing to move fast and get to that next step.
Are you more of a hands-on type of investor? Is it a more passive? Are you looking for board seats or?
Yeah, so luckily for us, no, we're not, I wouldn't call myself a vulture capitalist, which is, maybe in the public out there. No, so our terms are pretty standard. They're very founder friendly. We pride ourselves on working with founders, on being of service to them. It's pretty common, 6% stake that we take in each of our investments. We invest at the pre-seed stage, and no board seats. We just want to help founders with whatever traction that they can achieve in our accelerator program. So whether that's business development, whether that's investor introductions, whatever that may be, that's how we get hands-on.
And any industry specific, or are you agnostic, more opportunistic?
Yeah. So I invest in 48 companies a year. So I'm a very active investor. And I cover probably 4 or 5 different industries in general, but 2 that in particular that stick out. One being space. So I invest in aerospace and space companies. And then the second one being healthcare. So anything that's targeting enterprise healthcare between payers, providers, health systems as a whole. That's where my focus is largely.
Okay. And are you guys using your company as well for management, or any complementary type businesses together, or no?
M&I?
Yeah.
Well,
based on the SaaS proven concept,
yeah.
that you guys use you as a technical advisor or something.
No, not formally.
He doesn't return my phone.
The vulture capitalist in him won't give me the equity I'm looking for. But no, but it's very helpful, right? So the type of model that Techstars have, and this is where I think it's really important to think through what kind of venture capital models a startup is going through, and if you're a startup, what types of terms you're getting, because coming out of a Techstars, as we're looking at organizations, so we do invest in companies a little bit later on down the road, or we'll acquire companies that have come through programs like Techstars. It's important and attractive when an organization hasn't been completely diluted in terms of their cap table, and they have founders and investors that kind of understand that ecosystem really well. So from that standpoint, I think Techstars does a really great job.
And focus is California right now, or does it matter, or from presence standpoint?
Yeah, so generally we take in founders from all around the world. What I will say though is that California, we ask them to move to California for the duration of the program. So we run an accelerator program, it's 13 weeks long. We tell, and coach startup founders how to build their startup. So we're bringing in, people from Google, we're bringing in people from other large, organizations, technology companies, really coaching them and giving them hands-on mentorship on how to build their companies the right way. So for the duration of the program, they move to California. And then what I would say is that a lot of them then stay in California because of the benefits. There's a large engineering and talent pool here, specifically in Southern California, but generally, broadly across the entire state. There's a lot of investment capital here. So I think it was mentioned earlier, for every $1 in the US that is fundraised or venture-backed, 50% of that, 50 cents of that, is in California. Yep. And for early stage company building, it is critical to be near pools of capital because that is what ignites the flame, right? Like you have to grow your company, you have to scale, especially if you're building a venture-backed business, and capital is a key part of that.
Plus you got the large economy here in California as audience.
Yeah, and I think there's also a lot of signaling and credentialing that happens, right? So if you're a startup from California, it becomes a part of your ethos as a company to be innovative and to be disruptive, and that has impacts when you're going to market in terms of how you focus on the customer, and also as you're trying to attract more talent, right? So for us, when we're attracting talent in Latin America, where we have a couple offices, or Asia, it makes a big difference that we're a California-based organization. On the other side of this, we're working with a lot of, as I said, large organizations in terms of them being our clients. And so just in terms of data points, organizations in 2024 that are innovative and looking ahead, again, a lot of these in California are investing somewhere between 2 to 5% of their project budgets on generative AI. So that's different than if you go into other markets where that number starts getting smaller, and they might still be in that phase of just skunkworks, POCs, really outside of the core. So I think these types of things are indicative of what type of value and innovation and ethos is brought into the mix when you're in this state.
It does. Do you guys also work, we look at some of the tech transfer offices of different research universities like UCI and UCLA, UCSD. Have you worked with them as well, licensed some projects?
Yeah, so we don't license the technologies or the IP directly from those organizations, but a lot of times there are individuals, primarily students at those universities, that are looking to commercialize the IP. And the institutions themselves are actually looking for a way to commercialize it, and they bring together startup teams to do that. So we've invested in a few teams that went through UCI and their technology group. I'm still awaiting for one, being a UCLA alum, to get one from UCLA. Haven't found the right one just yet. And we have a few from the rest of the country as well.
Okay. Anything else, any other comment for the new startup individuals we have in the audience?
So I think what I'd say is, my team looked at 5,000 companies last year, all early stage, ranging obviously from various stages, some that were just a concept, just an idea, to others that had significant revenue. And out of the 5,000, I'd say probably 3,000, 4,000 of them were quote unquote AI. And I know that's the hot buzzword of the day. That's something that's top of mind for everyone. But the reality is that if you're going to pitch your company as an AI company, you need to understand whether or not you actually have real AI. A recommendation engine, a simple algorithm is not AI. And one of the jobs that I have to do as a VC is to discern and cut through the fluff of what's real, what's not. Is this transformational? Is this creating efficiencies? Is this making people better, faster, smarter? And that is, part of the responsibility. It's also part of the work I do on a day-to-day basis, and trying to understand the landscape as it continues to emerge.
Solving a problem. Are they able to solve problems or not?
Exactly.
So, Sajid, how about yourself?
I say throw AI in everything, make them do hard work. Yeah. Yeah, I think that goes for businesses and governments as well, right? Don't do AI for the sake of putting AI on the pitch deck or to appease boards that you're focusing on AI. Find the business cases, the actual value opportunities, and pursue the technology for that reason. And there are plenty, as we were talking about earlier. So I think that's kind of the core fundamental. There's too many people going after AI just for the sake of going after AI.
Just because it's like a calculation. So the last 10 minutes, I wanted to see if anybody in the audience, you have some more comment, Per?
Yeah, I think that just kind of spurred a thought is, as AI gets more, popularized within the mainstream, one thing that's become easier for entrepreneurs is to ship and build product, right? So you can quickly build products, ship them to your customers, and try to get some feedback. What's becoming increasingly harder, for a venture-backed startup is getting repeatable distribution to your end user and your end customer. And understanding those dynamics, those metrics, I think are going to be key, for the next decade of startup building. Companies that solve that and figure that out are the ones that are going to win.
Sustainable winning. Exactly. So with that, if anybody has any questions, last 7-10 minutes. Oh, Amir, I think in the back.
Hi, Ahmed, how large is your VC? What's the assets under management?
Yeah, so we have our portfolio's value today is over $100 billion. We've invested in 4,000 companies worldwide, and we run about 50 programs a year. So we make anywhere from 300 to 500 investments worldwide.
I sit on the board of UCLA Anderson, and I seeded the accelerator fund over there, so we should talk. There's a lot of interesting VC opportunities out of that school.
Yeah, absolutely.
So someone this morning asked me about biotech. And, a couple years ago, everyone was talking about biotech, right? And now nobody talks about biotech. So is it because everyone's investing in AI and they think it's a quick fix? Because obviously bio takes a long time to go through all the trials and approvals.
Yeah, I'd say, there are trends that kind of come and go. Biotech, I think, is so Southern California in particular has a very strong biotech presence. I haven't made any biotech investments. We don't typically look at biotech companies, only because you need to have tons of domain expertise to invest in those sort of moonshots. What I would say is that I think the investments have gone in. They're awaiting the time period to see how those are going to pan out. And then eventually, there will be another boom in a few years investing in new age biotech companies. But in particular, I think some areas in biotech, such as gene therapy, some of those areas are very top of mind.
I think it has to do with exit as well. Before we had exits going through a SPAC or other investment vehicles, going public. So when your exits are not there, the investors are not going to put the money into the opportunity. That's the problem too. Its bottom line is how am I going to get my money back? So.
Yeah, I think it goes to a pretty interesting point, though, that we had biotech, we had obviously blockchain, metaverse, crypto, all these things that were really large hype in the last few years, and some of it will pan out over some period of time, like biotech. But what makes AI a marked shift from all these other things is you can see the impact pretty fast, right? So an organization can have people deploying AI tools like in their software development cycle and pretty quickly start seeing 10% productivity increases, which is a big lift in a matter of, we're talking about 6 months or 12 months. So I think the fact that one of the reasons AI is so unique from everything else that's been happening, at least over the last 10 to 15 years, is the immediacy of the impact, and that's powerful.
To choose an investment, are you using any AI capability or?
So I'm not a 4,000 company investor, but when we are in my day-to-day work managing a digital-focused firm, yeah, I'm using AI pretty frequently on a personal basis, and I think that is a really interesting point in that almost every people sometimes ask me, what percentage of organizations are adopting AI? And it's like, actually probably about 100%, because either you're doing it from a strategic lens, or definitely the people on the ground are using it day in and day out. So increasingly, the answer is an emphatic yes.
Yeah, I'd say for us, we've started deploying AI in our investment review process. But it's kind of in two parts. First, we assess and evaluate the investment on our own individually before employing any sort of artificial intelligence into the process. The reason being is that we're always worried about bias or any other sort of augmentation taking place into our thesis development and our thinking. The second part is one thing that AI can't do. So it's very great, it's programmatic, it can give you a computational score of an investment. But where I'm investing, where there's very few data points, I need to assess the team. And I need to understand who those people are. Are they the people that we want to back and invest? And AI is not good at that. And the only way we can do that is through, obviously, meetings, diligence, talking to the entire management team, talking to customers, understanding their sort of sales pipeline, things of that sort.
So I have a question. How do you source your deals? How do you keep a long-term view with your investment? There are lots of people are VCs, but more like a club. They follow each other. I'd like to see how you distinguish yourself and source your deals and make sure that you are investing for the return on the investment for the long run.
Wait, you're saying VCs don't do critical thinking? I'm joking. No, this is a big part of the problem in VC, which is the essence of what's known as quote-unquote FOMO, the fear of missing out. So if there's a hot deal or hot startup that's about to, that's going around raising investment capital, and they have a term sheet from, let's say, Sequoia Capital or one of the other leading investment firms, they can shop that around, and then other people will say, oh, well, if they're in, then guess what, I'm in. And this is a big problem in VC. I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. This is part of our DNA, our psychology as humans. Social proofing is a big part of that. It's amplified in VC as it comes to investment dollars. The way we source our investments is that we host a bunch of community events throughout the US, and in particular in California. So my focus is in Southern California. I run 3 programs, healthcare, space, and LA. We do events at all the universities, or as many of them as we can get to. We just did an event yesterday in Pasadena targeting the NASA JPL folks, Caltech, Idea Lab. We're doing events at UCLA, USC. We're on the ground, we're meeting founders and entrepreneurs where they are, building relationships, because that's what we believe will lead to outsized long-term returns.
And with that, just getting ready to empty the room. So
no, not yet. You actually got one more panel coming up here.
Oh.
So we're going to try to give them a little time.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. So coming up here, we're going to talk about the future of international trade with Bob Spence. He's the chairman of the CIEDC. You're going to have to tell us what that means. By appointment of the U.S. Secretary of Commerce. which represents Inter-Asia Pacific, along with Mike Jacob. He's the president and general counsel of Pacific Merchant Shipping Association, and Dr. Dolph DeBruce, entertainer, book writer, Jaguar hawker, international trade expert, and speaker.
Do we have a method to the madness?
Well, I have a response to the introduction. I was introduced just now as an entertainer. That wasn't on the script. We sometimes get letters to my office saying, could you please send Dolphin to entertain us? And our response is, no, we're not an entertainer, you know. But anyway, I'm happy that you're happy with it.
Shall I give it a go and we'll just go down the road here and see what happens?
Is there a moderator? I think you're the
know that
moderator.
there is. May I start? What the heck?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is going to be radically different from what we've been hearing today on AI, and thank you all of you so much for staying as long as you have. But we're going to do a massive paradigm shift that has very little to do directly with AI, which is we're going to talk about a whirlwind. So in the world of international trade, we essentially understand there are flows of trade going back and forth, different directions, sort of like the trade winds going all around the world. But to talk about the future, we really have to think about projecting from where we were and where we are right now, which is these trade winds all around the world began to coalesce about over 50 years ago in 1972 when the Shanghai Communique was signed and China was open to the world. And it probably took nearly 20 years to discover that there were no longer trade winds per se. There was a cyclone, and the center of the cyclone was China. The entire world reindustrialized, making China the global epicenter of industrialization, which is the first time that has ever happened in the entire history of the entire world. Now here's the challenge for you. You have to not think about this as a positive event or a negative event, but just a reality. So where are we today? Today we are in the process of seeing that cyclone twister radically slow down, and we have a global disbursement, which means we are now going through a second industrialization phenomenon in our lifetime where everyone's going away from China. Don't think positive or negative, just look at the facts. What does that mean? It means that the future of world trade will be volatile for the next 20 to 30 years. Because that's how long it took us to get into this position. Let me give a couple of examples and give my cohorts some time to talk about some things. So, a company relocates from China to Malaysia. This is a real story. They're happy with the people in Malaysia, good workforce, got good roads, got good technology. But in China, their 77 suppliers were all in China, not in Malaysia. They only had 10. Now we have to figure out where do we get the other 66. This phenomenon is happening as we speak around the world. Mexico, I think we all kind of know what's happening in Mexico with California and the United States. Try this one on. Morocco, the same phenomenon is occurring there. We don't even know where the next one will happen. Our company just did an analysis for some medical device company and discovered a lot of their suppliers, you're not going to believe it, they're in Costa Rica. Who would have thought? This is how the world is changing incredibly rapidly. What that ultimately means for supply chains is we talk about supply chain dysfunction in the pandemic. Supply chain dysfunction will be with us for decades.
I echo those sentiments entirely. Well said. No, it's true. And here's the thing. If the world didn't change, there'd be no role for any of us. We wouldn't have this conference. Because people could just do today what they did yesterday, and tomorrow we'd do what we did today, and it doesn't change. But there is change. And there are some people who embrace that and think, how can we benefit from this? Or more interestingly, how can we offer value to the world so much that they're willing to pay us a little bit? Because when you crack that nut, when you can offer more value than you charge, then you've got an unending stream of clients. Zig Ziglar said it very well. He said, you can get whatever you want in this world, so long as you help enough other people get what they want. And that's why I think the really important thing, and why what you say is so real, is there are three kinds of people. There are those who make things happen, there are those who watch things happen, and then there are a vast majority who wonder what happened. And you've got to decide which category you want to be in, because everything is a decision. A decision to come to this conference is a decision. If you didn't come, you decided not to come. A decision not to make things happen is a decision. And that's why when you wake up every morning, you've got to decide, are you going to have a good day or a bad day? Don't let the circumstances dictate whether you have a good day. Because you'll say, well, it wasn't a good day because it was raining. It wasn't a good day because there was traffic. It wasn't a good day because the cat kicked me or whatever. You've got to decide, it's going to be a great day. And I'm going to do great in this world. And people are going to want what I have to offer. And they will. You create your own reality in that way. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me just say, Dolph, you undersold yourself because that was entertaining. I appreciate that. Thank you. I think to Bob's point, we're living in a changing world of trade, and to bring that back to some of the themes of this conference with respect to California investment, Pacific Merchant Shipping Association, we represent U.S. West Coast trade interests, ocean carriers, marine terminal operators, and we live in a world in the United States where we don't operate on the same basis as our trading partners with respect to the development of the infrastructure that we need to actually facilitate trade. Most countries in the world look at trade and international consumption patterns, ports, marine terminals, ocean carriers as assets to be developed by a nation state. We look at those as components of an economy that's federalized, and we actually do not centralize our investment in that type of freight infrastructure. It's decentralized. So states are responsible for those types of assets primarily. They're not financed through the federal government. But that also means that in a state like California, we don't even have a state port authority like other states do. We actually decentralize it further. So we have local ports that are run by cities, and they're expected then to actually build the infrastructure we need to facilitate the type of investment that we want to see in terms of trade. And why is that relevant to Bob's point? When we look at all the infrastructure we have, specifically in California, the nation's largest trade gateway is in Southern California. It's the ports of LA and Long Beach. It's financed through revenue bonding, not through general taxes, because we don't have a federalized system for supporting that type of infrastructure. We don't have a state system for doing that either. It's all proprietary. It's you eat what you kill. That means we have revenue bonding that's based on leases. The leases are based on projections of trade. The projections of trade that build our infrastructure were based on a history of growth between 1990 and 2006 that in Southern California was about 3 times GDP growth per year. That's what we financed for. That's what we underwrote for. That's what we wrote long-term leases on. It's also how we regulated our projection for what we expected to occur in terms of congestion from trucks and things like that, but also air quality in terms of setting cost-benefit analysis for how much should we do, how fast, in terms of regulatory stuff. Outside of all the other components of trade inside the United States where we're losing market share in Southern California to competitors in Savannah, New York, and Houston, it's in the context that Bob was talking about, which is the slowing down of that overall growth. So where we were looking at the onset of all this new productivity from China and the Far East for many, many years, growing our trade at 3 times GDP. If you look at the World Bank projections for trade and projections for GDP for this year and next year and the year after, it's 1-to-1. GDP and total trade growth are almost exactly the same. So if you're building your infrastructure out based on revenue bonding as a country, which is what we do, you've already put yourself behind the 8-ball. You cannot grow faster than your profile for the revenue you need to underwrite your infrastructure. We're already not meeting those projections, and the place you see that the most is in Southern California. So that's a challenge for us moving forward, fitting our system into the components of the system that Bob was talking about.
So Mike, I don't know how I volunteered to be moderator. We're going to do round 2, and then we'll do questions, and we'll all get out of here. So now that you sort of have the scene set for you, let's look at some of the other dynamics of what we can anticipate will be happening in the future. And I'm staying with industrial relocation because I think that's something that's kind of easy for people to understand, envision, imagine what is happening. So, and the question is, where does California fit into all of this? There are 2 big winners, Mexico and Vietnam. Guess what they have? The same problems, interestingly enough. Neither of those countries have enough electricity or water to deal with what's already come, let alone what is coming. So it is inevitable that there will be other countries that will be playing in this game over time in North Africa, in South America, expansion of other activities in other parts of Southeast Asia. If anybody is wondering where the new epicenter is, it's somewhere in the South China Sea, all of those countries that touch it. That epicenter is not changing. That is the future of world trade in the next 20 to 30 years with no doubt whatsoever. Having said that, where it gets interesting is what are all of these production centers lacking? Innovation and technology, and we are having conversations every single day about these needs. Yes, we have the workers. Yes, we have some good industrial engineers. But there are all these other technologies that we don't have and we cannot advance and we can't do this and we can't do that without them, and it keeps coming back to us. So it's the technology transfer that is clearly the future engine of growth for California on a worldwide basis. And we have something else coming that we can only imagine what happened in China in the last 30 years. It's coming. It's already started. We haven't even imagined how massive the capital flow is going to be into this state. Off the charts. Don't think billions, think trillions.
Well said. When I try to relate what you've just said to my own experience, when I was a young engineering student, the coveted calculator of the day was made by Hewlett-Packard, right? Famous American company. They started manufacturing in Singapore for the very reasons that in more recent years we've gone to China. Cheaper labor, good quality workmanship. So I proudly owned Hewlett-Packard calculators with made in Singapore on them. But as Singapore gained an economic ability and they wanted to up-level their infrastructure, the manufacturing shifted, and it went initially to China that had a vast resource of workers and technology that they imported. They never originated it, as you say. And now we're seeing disruptions there, and it's going to Malaysia and Vietnam and India and other places. So that's a live example of what's happening. But all along, the technology has come from the US with an emphasis, as we've heard from many speakers, from California. About 51% of the technology comes from one state. It's disproportionate to the population, it's disproportionate to the GDP, and it's to the credit of the state. But the fact remains that it's technology that's at the forefront, because as we give our manufacturing to other countries because they can do it better and cheaper, we can focus on the things that generate the ideas that create those technologies. That's why most of the massive companies, the Microsofts and the Apple and the Google and you name them all, most of them, not all, there are a few big ones in China, but most of them are still based here in the US, and interestingly, most of those are still in California.
Yeah, I think from our view of that, then, what does that mean for translation into the supply chain? How do you actually see that physical manifestation in the trade flows? We are not going to maintain a monopoly on the Far East trade, trans-Pacific. So if you're looking at what we need to do in the future in terms of providing a fluid supply chain, a process for making sure that we're making efficient decisions, we're doing it in a way which is environmentally friendly, which means we're reducing scope 3 emissions, we're maximizing our accommodation for ocean freight versus other types of transportation in terms of just GHG per ton mile. There's absolutely no question that ocean freight is going to be best for the environment long term. But it's not always going to be the best value proposition for the cargo. And the more it translates into high value commodities like tech, the less you're going to have a tolerance for sitting on a ship for 2 weeks. And you're going to want to move that product faster, you're going to want to move it better, and you're going to be less concerned with the day-to-day rate that you're looking at in the shipping lanes from an ocean carrier. And you're going to be more focused on what's the actual performance characteristic of delivery on time. You're going to care about performance because you have high-value commodities. We're very good at building facilities for low-value commodities in the world. We're not very good at delivering on the value proposition for delivering high-tech, high-value commodities. And so we've invested billions of dollars into systems that aren't going to reflect the value of the customer in the near future. And so there's going to be a lot of reckoning in the system about that, because those two things are going to be the imperative, right? Globally, how do you reduce emissions, which means you're moving away from high-speed travel, you're moving away from air freight, and at the same time, the commodities that are growing the fastest produce the most amount of economic value, and from a trade perspective, have the most in terms of the traditional reason why you do trade, right? Just very historically, some people are really good at producing some things, and other commodities are really great at being produced in other places, and that's why you have different value. It's just Daniel Ricardo from 200 years ago.
Yeah,
right?
Mike just gave you
Yep.
Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage in 1766, I think it was.
So that still exists, but the biggest comparative value is going to place a lot of different people in places where they have a lot of conflicting goals, a lot of conflicting priorities, and they will not reflect the infrastructure that actually support what we do. So we built 20th century infrastructure. We haven't paid for the 20th century infrastructure we're already using, and we're going to have 21st century problems. Just, I'll kick that off, and then I'll hand it back to Dolphin and Bob. But just in general, in the supply chain, we have very, very aggressive goals. There are no places in the world which are exhibiting higher levels of investment in clean technology, especially with respect to air quality, than Southern California. And the state of California itself is on the forefront of a lot of improvements with respect to environmental, and I'll give you a couple of examples. So in 2006, the state of California adopted a goods movement emission reduction plan. It's a $5 billion regulatory package where the state put up about $100 million over 10 years, and the rest of it was all funded by the private sector. Every single engine that touches a container at the ports of LA and Long Beach is subject to a new rule. So there's cleaner fuels for ships. When your ship's at berth, it has to plug in. Cargo handling equipment has to be best available control technology. The tugs that move the ships are all cleaner than anywhere else in the world. And trucking emissions from diesel in Southern California have been reduced 98% since 2006, and it's the cleanest trucking fleet in the country. We plug in more ships in Southern California than anywhere else in the world, and that's to address, again, 20th century pollution. That's NOx, SOx, and diesel particulate matter. Haven't even touched the carbon yet, because a lot of those solutions actually increase greenhouse gases. So the next phase is elevating those principles towards zero emissions, zero carbon. Those have to be global solutions, and they have to be national solutions because they're so expensive. You know, we were talking about doing all that for $5 billion over the last 18 years. Just the next phase of cargo handling equipment, we've estimated as about $30 billion just for LA and Long Beach. And the trucking infrastructure that you need to go to zero emissions after you've reduced the first 98% of emissions from DPM to get to zero for GHGs is orders of magnitude bigger, tens of billions of dollars. And you can't do those things when you're financing locally, and you can't do those things where you don't distort the marketplace because you have to compete with other people that in Savannah or Houston are not doing it. So from a national perspective, you have to do it, and then we have global assets that move these things. So the actual basis of having a global intermodal system that facilitated what Bob was talking about with the growth of China and other overseas things is that intermodalism means you can take that equipment, you can use it anywhere in the world. It's amazing. But to do that, you have to have international standards. And if you don't do that, then you're creating a lot of inefficiencies in the system. Some people are winners, some people are losers. And in a GHG economy, where you're actually talking about carbon, and carbon's a global pollutant, it doesn't have any local impact whatsoever, it's all cumulative. You have to be efficient about it. It has to be global, otherwise you create a lot of inefficiency and you're not maximizing the total value of the system. You create displacement between competitors. So some countries would win, other countries would lose, and that is not what you want to do in international trade. You want it to actually be a level playing field so people can actually make the decisions that are best for everyone.
Well, just to add to that, sometimes there are international changes that take place that do all that you say. When they opened the Suez Canal, that changed the routes that vessels had to take. It reduced pollution, of course. Pollution wasn't on our minds back then. In 1956, they opened the Suez Canal. That again changed the shipping patterns for many companies, reduced fuel consumption. As you say, we've got much more efficient use of fuels, not just in trucks, 98% reduction, that's great, on vessels too. In the Netherlands, at the Marine Institute, we've been developing wind sails for large cargo ships, and you've all seen them. These are massive, big, hydraulically operated metal sails that reduce fuel consumption tremendously. There's talk of a new canal going through Nicaragua, because one of the problems, or two problems with the Panama Canal, is there's now a backlog of vessels trying to get through. There's a waiting list, which is inefficient, and it causes more fuel consumption. And secondly, the vessels today are becoming so big, they no longer fit in the Panama Canal. Every 10 or 20 years, they have massive expenditure to increase the size of the locks. The Nicaraguan Canal, if it were to go ahead, would allow much bigger vessels to go through. So every now and then, there's a massive shift in how we see things. And I think part of the trick and what California is so good at is predicting what some of those changes are and making adjustments. There's talk, I don't know if it's popular right now, of having a bonded rail line from Long Beach into Nevada so that they can have a bigger bonded area and handle a bigger volume of cargo, because I understand there's a bottleneck there too. That's why some of it is going to the East Coast. So it takes bold initiative to make changes, to go into the future so that we future-proof our own society. I think it's great, Bob.
What's going on with the other ports that we're competing with in the United States?
Well, I'm really going to defer to Mike on that. However, I grew up in Savannah, Georgia, and no one on the face of the earth ever imagined Savannah, Georgia would be. I think it's number 4 in the nation today. So these shifts have already started to take place, and they're very dramatic.
Yeah. So there, I guess it's a complex question, and But the answers, unfortunately, are not less complex than the question. The shifts are happening for multiple reasons. And we have a situation on the US West Coast where in the last 18 years, the ports of LA and Long Beach have grown by a collective 27%. Oakland is actually decreased, and the Pacific Northwest and Seattle and Tacoma, they've actually decreased by over a quarter. Savannah has grown over 150%. West Coast Canada, about the same. Houston, you can just go down the line. Oakland used to be the fourth largest port about 20 years ago in the country by container volume. Now they're 10th. And Savannah was about 10th, and now they're 4th. Houston wasn't on the map. Now they are. And so there's a lot of reasons for that. One of them is just diversification of cargo. Post 9/11 and then post 2005 when we had, 2002 when we had some labor issues here, cargo owners decided that they didn't want to have all of their trade in one basket. They started to diversify. It was called the Four Corners strategy. We'll put a little bit in Southern California, some up in the PNW, some in New York, New Jersey, and some in the Southeast. Right? So that's natural, that diversification is going to occur. But what we found is while that was happening, we were still growing market share because we were still growing faster than the other competitors, even though we have higher base prices for labor and real estate and all that. But we have a business where we do everything in volume, right? We do economies of scale. So as long as our costs per unit are going down, we're still ahead of the curve. But once you start seeing what we saw, which was, then you had this diversification occur. After the Great Recession, everyone else started growing back. We didn't recapture our volumes. At the same time, we started layering on a lot of additional costs. Some of it's environmental, but not all of it. In any event, we're doing bad math on the US West Coast. We're increasing costs faster than we're increasing volume. So our cost per unit goes up. And then you have discretionary cargo. You know where that goes? Somewhere else, which means while you're increasing costs, the number of units you have goes down. So you're increasing cost per unit. And then you know what happens? Discretionary cargo leaves. So you're increasing your cost per unit. At the same time, everyone else is not doing the same thing we're doing. So while we were spending a lot of money to clean up emissions reductions, they don't have the same zeal for the environment some of our competitor states. And to put it mildly, they're actively marketing against us. They want our cargo. So it's imperative on us moving forward as we look at what the 21st century economy means, that we start capitalizing on our comparative advantage here. Look at things like Scope 3 emissions. When you ship through the US West Coast, that is actually a preferred alternative from a greenhouse gas perspective. Our customers, cargo owners, don't internalize that cost yet, but they will. And as that system for accounting starts improving, those are things where we need to start taking a more positive view at some of these cost centers that haven't been reflected in our rates and that our customers haven't had to be accounting for. Okay, so this is a good question for the rest of the room that didn't hear it. It was about a question of like, where do these things get sourced? US West Coast, we've taken for granted that we're the primary gateway for most Asian cargo, anything trans-Pacific. And about 10 years ago, we were doing about 2/3 of that cargo. Now it's 50-50. So Gulf and East Coast ports importing Chinese goods at the same rate as the US West Coast. So it isn't, we used to take it for granted. You cannot do that any longer. There's a 50-50 chance that if someone's coming from East Asia, it is not going through the US West Coast.
I think we'll call that a wrap here, but thank you, Dr. DeRoos, Mr. Spence, and Mr. Jacob. Everybody give them a round of applause. Put a special thanks to Dan and Ling Sieu for putting everything together here, as well as Treasurer Fiona Ma, Marcia Frost coming in today, as well as Senator Hertzberg and Controller Cohen's here, and all the expert panelists and brilliant companies shaping the future of California and our continued growth and let's get those checkbooks out for all these other companies.